Are you tired of biased news that insults your intelligence and doesn't give you critical thinking information? Then like and subscribe to Melanated Media News, the #1 source for independent thinkers news.
During late July of this year, the Word Church hosted 3 simultaneous weekends of Casket Crusades. Casket Crusades are marches where thousands of church members walk around holding caskets, while other members are on the bullhorn talking about crime, drugs, and violence destroying the community. And the only solution is to give your life to Christ. The last march started at East Technical High School. It wasn't until 4 months later that I found out Satanist Eric Freeman, who purchased the House of Wheels, was literally steps away from the march. The House of Wheels sits literally next to the housing projects in a predominantly black neighborhood. Once word got out that a Satanist had arrived in the black community, social media exploded with government conspiracy agendas of all sorts, to say the least. Understandably so, considering the fact that there is a church on every corner in the black community. Although it took several years for people to find out Eric had occupied the House of Wheels, and Satanists don't usually practice their craft in the open, Eric was easy to get in touch with. I must admit I wanted to speak with Eric inside the haunted House of Wheels, but I decided to change my mind. As Eric informed me, once inside, he had to lock the doors due to people stealing pipes and lead and all other things. At this point, my only option of leaving in the case of an emergency was an empty window on the 3rd floor in a haunted funeral home with a locked back door and front door and no windows on the 1st floor. So I did what any black man would do in a scary movie. I decided to do the interview outside. I spoke with Eric about why he decided to become a Satanist, his views on Christianity, misconceptions of Satanists, and more. I hope you enjoy the interview.
Are you talking about the New Church of Satan stuff? Mm-hmm. Is that what you're talking about? That's not going on here. This is my organization. I have it. It's based out of LA. I live here, and so wherever I am is where my church is. But that's just a spiritual thing to me. Like, I could be anywhere, literally anywhere. This is my house. I live here, but I haven't had any meetings here. I haven't had anything. Literally. So, I mean, I got stuff going on. LA is really the place for all that. And I got stuff going on here, but like, we don't recruit, I don't know, I had a TV show that was supposed to pay me to go do like evangelical Satanism, which I think could probably dispel a lot of the rumors. Satanists don't worship.
Well,
we don't believe in any deity. It depends what you consider. Like, I think everyone does rituals. When I get up in the morning, I go brush my teeth, I go make coffee. Those are my rituals.
Okay, blood sacrifices, different things.
That's all TV. That's all TV and movies, man. Like, if anyone has, like, here's the whole thing that I don't understand. If anyone took literally 5 seconds to go on Google and look up Satanism, they'd find out instantaneously it's none of the things that they think it is. Like, it would literally take 5 seconds for most people to dispel, like, I don't know if it's Christian propaganda, I don't know if it's movies, I don't know if it's TV. I really don't know what it is. Okay, the pentagram, everyone always makes it the wrong way. Satanists use it down because you have the air and heaven, and then you have man, woman, and earth. Is why that, and so the center point always leads down so that you're grounded.
When you say the pentagram is pointed downward, is there a connection between that and the Bible referencing God casting down Satan to earth?
We don't really represent, like, Satanists really have very little to do with the actual either Old Testament or New Testament, except to realize that it's all a fallacy. If anything, what we do is there's a book by John Milton called Paradise Lost, where it's basically the story of God and Michael, Lucifer, battling because Lucifer saw God doing things that were bad and what he felt criminal, and so he decided to fight against injustice. and utilize his army to basically take over, and it was a revolt. It was basically like a fresh start is what he wanted, and he was cast down. He knew he wouldn't necessarily win, but he felt that the fight was worth risking it. And so that's why Satanists use the term Satan. Like, everyone always asks me, like, how come, if you don't believe in the devil, how come you use Satan? And on my business cards it says Professor of Levian Philosophy. He fought against God because God was doing criminal actions against man. You
mean like wiping out genocide. Civilizations, first born, killed, different things like
Abraham that. And all of it.
So that's a different perspective. What made you accept that perspective?
I studied, I was a bad kid, and so my mom, she worked at a college, and so I would have to go to school with her in the summer, and I would have to pick and choose classes to occupy my time, so I wasn't just running wild. And so I've always been interested in religion. I've always been interested in basically the myth of Christ, I think, is where it probably started. But then I started researching other religions to see how man, I guess, could be so ignorant to decide what was being named what, and then how to go to war with each other over what made-up name they decided something was called. And so the whole concept of battle about delusions has always fascinated. And when I started doing research, everything was very spiritual. Most things were Christianity, and then there's Buddhism, and then there's Hinduism, and so when I got to Satanism was the only thing that was done with logic. It was the only thing that was literally pure philosophy and logic encased in a format to get the most out of life. It was so dissimilar than any other Abrahamic religion.
What about Buddhism?
Buddhism teaches you how to get nothing out of life, and between us, I see Buddhism and Satanism to be almost brothers, but on the opposite spectrum. Are you familiar with the Agari at all?
Agari?
The Agari, yeah. It's a sect of Hinduism. Okay. And I would actually classify it more to themselves, is who they really worship. But they go through a long process of basically going through torturous ordeals to rid themselves of what others made them, so they can be reborn as a new, honest, fresh creature of light. And so they surround themselves with darkness until they get to the light. And it's a real similar pathway. Aleister Crowley actually did the exact same thing. Like, people are always like, ooh, Aleister Crowley's the devil. But Aleister Crowley really he was pushing his limits to find out what his mortal realm was, like how far he could go in this realm. And like, people are like, oh, do without wilt in Aleister Crowley. But it's really, do without wilt is the whole law. Love is the law. Love under will. So you can do whatever you want as long as you do it with love, and you do it with love in your heart, and because that's all there is. And people always, they just skip all that, There's a lot to it that if people ever give it an opportunity to...
So he never did anything with kids?
Who, Crowley?
Yes, that's what they're saying.
There's a million different things about kids that people talk about. I personally, not any research I've ever seen. He was married. I know he went to Egypt, but I've never seen any reports that he did anything with kids. Now, a lot of the Republicans I've seen reports who did that I actually have more of a tendency to believe than Crowley. Like, Crowley was a magical individual. He was surrounded by beautiful women all the time, and so, I don't think that way. My brain really doesn't comprehend any kind of child molestation or child abuse. It doesn't, it literally stops the gears. Stop moving. They're like click, click, because I don't get it. I can't even fathom how someone can sexualize something that's not even it's like finding dogs. And I don't know if it's literally, I can't get that. I really think they should just be wiped out, as far as I'm concerned. I think anyone who's found doing any of that stuff and they're guilty, time to go, man. Because you don't need any of that around. In 1966, Anton LaVey decided to start the Church of Satan because he was super tired of Christian morality dictating how everyone should live, and that he felt that we were primal creatures and that we had primal instincts, and that if you didn't utilize your instincts, that they would destroy you from the inside out, from hiding. So his whole thing was utilizing whatever it is, even if it seemed to be negative, in a positive manner so that it's not being blocked up. Anyone who actually believes in a personified devil is what I classify as a confused Christian, because since Satanists don't believe in the devil, like, okay, so when you see people murdering, like you were talking about, murdering in the name of Satan, like, that person needs a scapegoat to accept their fucked up nature. They can't take responsibility for their own sickness, and if they would take responsibility for their own sickness, they'd be able to possibly do something positive. Like, I use this example all the time. Like a serial killer or someone who cuts people's faces off or whatever is technically no different than a plastic surgeon. But one uses something for a positive light, and one uses it for a negative light. And so you can really utilize, I mean, there's only a couple of things that I can't really think about that, like, you can't use positive. Some people like to kill. Those people are soldiers. Yeah. If you need a book or you need an imaginary being to tell you the difference between right and wrong, something's wrong. Like, you should know inherently what's right and wrong. You just should. You should know, don't hurt kids, don't hurt animals, don't hurt the elderly, don't break shit, don't fuck it up, don't lie, don't, all those things. And really, I do love the concept of, like, the 10 Commandments, and I think those are all good general rules as a human being. But that's about it. That I'll take from the Bible. And those, to me, are all just common sense. Like I don't understand why those have to be carved into stone for people to know what you should and shouldn't do as a human being.